Hello and welcome to 10,000 Stitches Podcast, episode 97. This is at this rate, monthly podcast where I talk all about the joys of knitting. My name is Andy. If you wanted to find me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Purlbug, Purlbug. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. If you're looking for links to anything that I mentioned today, patterns, shops, anything that is linkable and worth linking. If you're watching this via the embedded video on the blog post or the Ravelry thread, everything will be linked right below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the description box. You can that will take you to the blog post, and then, like I said, everything will be linked there right below the video. So, yeah, it's been a little while. I think this is I think it's been 4 weeks now since I recorded the last episode, and that has just been because my life has just been kind of crazy, but teaching is winding down. All we have left is just the finals, so this weekend has been just crazy for me because it's been the first weekend in a long time when I just don't feel super stressed out because the final's already written. I had to write it last week. So it's like this weekend I've actually just been able to relax and I don't have to be freaking out about oh my gosh, I need to have lecture material ready for Monday. And so that has just been really good. So hopefully these episodes will start coming at slightly more regular intervals. But yeah, we're back and I have a ton to talk about and show you guys today. So I'm super duper excited for that. So let's get into it. We'll do some finished objects. We'll do works in progress. We'll do sort of what's coming up next. And then there is dyeing, but you're going to see that in the works in progress. Because everything I've dyed lately, I'm actually knitting with right now. And then we'll talk about the knit along. We'll do a question of the week, and then we'll do some chit chat. So settle in. But yeah, let's show off the first thing, which is my finished object, which is my match and move. So if you follow me on Instagram, you would have already seen a picture of this, but to get it all in one picture, I had to sort of bunch it up. So this is it. It is done. As a reminder, this is a pattern by Martina Bem, and it is just one of these big, huge, sort of asymmetric triangular shawls that has that sort of spine running down the center, a la Find Your Fade. So it's sort of that same shape. And mine is made with some hand-dyed yarn that I did in this sort of purple and white variegated colorway, and then these little pops of yellow in there as well. And this is sort of my Skol shawl, because Skol is sort of the, battle cry or whatever you want to call it for the Minnesota Vikings, which is what this is themed after, because they are my home football team. So yeah, I really enjoyed knitting this. I talked a lot about it before, so I'm not going to go into too many specifics. But I mean, there's not much to talk about anyway because it's just a big triangular garter shawl. I actually haven't even blocked it because I just don't think it needs to be blocked. It is falling nicely into shape as is. And I'm sorry that the autofocus on the camera is a little weird. I didn't turn it off because my computer is out of arm's reach. So I'm just going to let the autofocus do whatever it's going to do, and hopefully it'll be okay. But anyway, so I really loved this. I had been intending on doing the last couple rows in yellow. I wasn't intending on doing this much in yellow, but I did because I ran out of purple. So I actually only had this much yarn left over. So this little ball of purple is from the first ball that I used, right? So for the first half of this shawl. And then this is what I had left from the second ball, and it was not going to be enough to finish up sort of this section. So I was like, whatever, I'll just switch to yellow, make a little bit of a bigger yellow splash on the end. So this is how much I had of yellow. I think total this is 6 grams worth of yarn. So it's not very much, but I am actually really happy with it because I was able to, kind of use up everything. And then these will, go into my scrap blanket. So I'm very pleased with this. I would definitely make another one of these again. I'm actually thinking maybe about making a bigger one because I have 3 yarns that I think would work well as sort of a fade, which I should gather those up and talk about them with my coming up next. So hopefully I'll remember that. But yeah, I love that she gives you sort of a formula for when to start, moving from one section into another so that you could, do it with more or less yarn. I think her pattern calls for 300 grams of yarn. This is about 210 grams of fingering weight yarn. She's using, I think, lace weight yarn, but it's like, it's very adaptable. And this thing is huge. Like, you can't see it all in frame, but it is real big. And it's just, squishy and pleasant, and I love it. And I love these sort of shaped shawls like this, these sort of asymmetric triangular shawls, because I think having the nice long tails really makes them very wearable. In the way that I like to wear shawls, which I'm not demonstrating very well right now, but I sort of like to wear these sort of shawls like this, with sort of the point roughly in the center, but I like that the big long tails mean that it's not just gonna like slide off. So I really love these sorts of shawls. I wear my super simple sock shawl, which is a similar sort of shape, and my bias shawl all the time last winter. So I think I will get a lot of wear out of this once it gets a little bit cooler. But yeah, I really love it. And the colors are a little bit, crazy, but since most of my wardrobe is black and, gray and navy blue, I think it kind of works. So that's my match and move, and I totally love it, and I would highly recommend this pattern to anyone, especially if you kind of like this shape, but you don't necessarily want something that has like lace bits or anything in it. Like, this is a great mindless knit, so would highly recommend to anyone. So that's that. So that's my finished object. So I will mention my my socks that I'm making with the Luna Pearl yarns, the Tropic of Calculus. I think I showed those off the last time I recorded. I've been chugging away at those at work, but they are actually still in my office. I forgot to bring them home. But like, one of them is done and the other I just put the heel in. So hopefully by the next time I record, I will, well, if I record again in 2 weeks, I will probably have them done by then. So I'll show them off again then. But yeah, just for the sake of completeness. Those are still happening, but they got left at work on Friday, so bummer. But I do have another sock to show off, which is a half object. And I think again, I talked about these the last time I recorded, but these are a pair of socks for my older brother, and they are being made using Regia Perfect, which is the sort of the way that this is designed. If you haven't ever heard of this before, is basically you start pulling from the center, and they have this sort of design kind of built into the yarn, and so you knit one sock, and then you will you pull out the rest of the yarn, that you didn't use for this sock, and then you will hit a bunch of yellow, and then you pull all that yellow out, and it starts back again into this color, so that you can make two identical socks. And it's really great. I've made a lot of Perfect socks before, and I really love them. And yeah, this one is for my brother. So this is for my older brother, who has feet which are about the same length as mine, but wider. So I basically just made this similar to the way I would make a sock for myself, just with more stitches. So this is just a regular sort of heel flap and gusset sock, and it's 72 stitches, knit on a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle, and yeah, otherwise it's just completely vanilla. This one I just finished up last night, and I think the last time I recorded, I was actually on the heel flap of this sock. And then it just sat for the longest time. Like, I just, for whatever reason, got a huge mental block sort of after I did the heel flap, and just didn't work on it forever. And then within just like the past 3 days or so, I knit the entire foot. And I haven't cast on the second one yet because I just finished this last night. But yeah, I definitely, hopefully have gotten through whatever weird mental block I had about it. But yeah, I'm super excited, and I'm going to try and have them ready to give to him by the time I see him in August. So yeah, that gives me enough time. It gives me like 2 or 3 weeks to finish the other one, so I think it should be fine. But yeah, totally loving it, and I'm noticing that I think my gauge is loosening up a little bit, which is not a bad thing because I knit crazy tight, especially when it comes to socks. But I think my gauge has loosened up a little bit, because it used to be that my row gauge for US 1 was 5 rows per centimeter, and on this sock it was more like 4.5. And I've noticed a similar thing with like my US zeros, which I'm knitting my other socks on right now, is that my row gauge for those used to be about 5.5 rows per centimeter, and now it's closer to 5. So maybe my gauge is loosening up a little bit. I wouldn't complain, because it's kind of murder on my hands how tight I used to knit. But yeah, so that's that. And how am I looking for time? Okay, so I'm going to talk about another thing And this is it sort of straddles the line, sort of similar to like a half object. It sort of straddles the line between finished objects and works in progress. And that is something that you guys haven't seen yet, but it is another go at a viajante, which if you've been around for a little while, you'll know that I tried knitting one of these before and just wound up kind of giving up on it. I don't know what the problem was that time. But this one, so this yarn is some yarn that I dyed. So this is sort of showing off a little bit of dyeing. So this is what the yarn looks like. It's sort of this deep foresty green kind of color, which is getting super washed out because of the windows, but maybe that's a little bit better representation of the color. It's this sort of deep foresty green, and this is on the BFL base, the 7525 Superwash BFL nylon base that I got a little while ago. And I dyed up 4 skeins of this because I had wanted to knit a sweater. I wanted to knit the hoodie shawl cardigan by, oh my gosh, I think it's Suzanne Summer, but I could be totally wrong. And I dyed up all this yarn to knit that, and then I knit a gauge swatch, and to get the gauge required in the pattern just was not really at a fabric density that I was comfortable with. I actually, so I'm currently knitting this on a US 4 right now, and with a US 4, I'm just a little bit off gauge for that cardigan pattern. Like I could just knit like the next size up and I would be okay. But like this fabric is just it's not as dense as I would maybe prefer for a cardigan. Like I just feel like cardigans need to be a little bit more hard wearing. They need to be a little bit more dense than like a shawl. So I just wasn't loving it, and I was like, okay, well, what else can I do with all of this yarn? So we'll talk about this. But I started knitting a viajante with it because I was like, it's such a beautiful yarn. Like I really would love to use it for a viajante. So this is where I am. I basically, okay, so if you don't know anything about the viajante, you start knitting it flat. So you start with this garter portion up top, and you knit that flat, and then you basically join it in the round then to create this sort of tube shape. And then you just keep knitting, you keep knitting, you keep knitting, and you sort of do increases and decreases like you would for like a bias shawl. And it creates this sort of long wedge, and depending on how long you want to knit it, it can become this huge big thing. And it basically can become long enough that you can sort of flatten it down, like I'm holding it right now. You flatten it down and you can wear it like a bias shawl you would. Or you can kind of put your head through the hole and then wear it as this big dramatic cape. So I am just about at the end of the first ball, and I have sort of made a decision that I'm going to put this on hold for a little while because I don't know that I want the big, huge, dramatic piece. Like, as I'm thinking more and more about it, I just don't know that that would be that wearable. And I feel like if I wore it sort of doubled over like a bias shawl, it would just be way too warm. But the place where I am right now, and you'll note I kind of took my needles out of this and put the little end caps on my cable so that I can, mess with it and not have to worry about all my stitches falling off the needles. But right now, if I kind of pull it on over my head, it is currently a great size for sort of like just a bandana sort of cowl thing. And so I'm going to put this on hold, and I have other plans for the other 3 skeins of this yarn. And then basically I'm going to come back to this whenever I'm done with the other thing using the rest of that yarn, and take what remains of this and whatever yarn is left over from that other project and just finish this out and just have it as sort of like a nice neck warmer, kind of chest warmer cowl rather than a big dramatic giant thing. So this is going to be put on hold for a little while, and you will probably see this again once I pick it back up to work on it again. But yeah, and I made some modifications to kind of how I am knitting it, from what I learned from the last time. So if you are curious, I will try and remember to link to my project page so that you guys can see sort of those modifications that I've made, because I've detailed them there. So my other work in progress is, again, something you guys haven't seen. I very briefly mentioned it in my sort of tiny little video that I did last week, but this is another thing that I dyed up some yarn for it. So this is on the other base that I got recently, the 7525 Superwash Merino nylon yarn. And I dyed up these 2 skeins, and what was interesting is these actually came from exactly the same dye bath. I just put this one in first and let it soak up most of the dye, and then I put this one in. So it produced a really cool effect, and I think it will produce a really cool effect on the final object, which is the Ribwise tank by Pearl Soho. And this is, sort of, the reason I did 2 colors is because, oh god, in their pictures, they have the front and the back piece done in 2 different colors. And so I really liked that effect. And so I am currently working on the front piece, which is being done in the lighter color. And I'm about this far. It's a lot of, it's not just stockinette, but it's just a lot of sort of samey knitting. So I haven't been working on it too much, but it is something that I pick up every so often. And I am knitting this on US 2.5s, which are 3mm needles. I forget exactly which size it is that I'm knitting, but I stepped down a needle size and stepped up a size in the pattern so that I could get a little bit denser fabric, because this is supposed to be a tank top and I want to wear it without anything underneath it other than a bra, of course, but like I don't want to have to layer another tank top underneath it, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be like see-through basically. But yeah, otherwise I really am liking it so far. I'll try and put in a picture so that you guys can see what it's actually supposed to look like. But it has these really cool detailings at the side where like it doesn't have any actual waist shaping in terms of like increases and decreases, but you do this sort of ribbed pattern at the side and it sort of pulls the sides in and gives it a little bit of gentle waist shaping, which I'm super excited about. The only modifications I'm making to the pattern, well, actually there's quite a few, I think, but the ones that I've made so far is I did a garter sort of band at the bottom instead of, I forget what they have you do. I think they basically don't have any bottom edging or something, but like I basically worked like 10 rows of garter at the bottom, and then I worked an extra 10 rows before I sort of started into this ribbing pattern because I just wanted to add a little bit of length to the body. And then the other difference I made is that in the ribbing, so it's 1x1 ribbing. Let's see if I can get close enough for you guys to see that. So it's 1x1 ribbing, and there we go. I always think 1x1 rib looks really messy, so you guys can probably see, it's not liking focusing on that, but you guys can probably see that I'm actually doing on the front side, on the right side, I'm doing my knit stitches in my ribbing twisted, because I think that just sort of tightens up the ribbing and makes it look a little bit less sloppy. So I'm doing that for all of the right side knit stitches in my ribbing. So yeah. And then, yeah, we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to have to modify sort of the straps or the armholes or anything. We'll kind of see when I get to that. But I have been making notes on my project page on Ravelry sort of with the modifications that I'm making. And something else that I did, which may or may not be helpful to other people, but Pearl Soho is sort of notorious for not putting charts in their patterns. And I run into this problem before with like the Traveling Cables hat and the Traveling Cables mitts, where they don't chart things. And I guess like you can't get too upset because like these are free patterns, so it's like, well, you got what you paid for and more. But I'm definitely a person who prefers to have a chart versus a written pattern, especially for this, where they have this sort of written out in different pieces where they're like, oh, the left panel and the right panel and the center panel. It's like, okay, but I just want to see all of that all at once. Like I want to know on each row, what do I need to do? So I sort of charted it out. And you can find that on my project page for this as like one of the project images, but I basically charted out up until the armpits, what are you doing on every single row? And of course, like the stitch counts might change depending on which size you're making, but along the bottom, I have which stitches, right? So I have sort of the side panel with the appropriate stitches, which is the same for every single size. And then it basically just skips. I like don't have anything for like that chunk of stockinette, and then I have, you know, the little center bit and then the other side. So you could easily just adjust basically the stitch counts of where those center stitches need to be, because that's the only thing that will change for each size, because the center panels are the same size on each side for every single size, if that makes sense. So if you're interested in knitting this, but you kind of need to see it charted, at least for the body portion, I have that and it's on my project page, and I'll try and remember to link to that in the notes for this episode. So yeah, I don't know when that's going to get finished. It's kind of one of those things that like I've just been picking at whenever I feel like it. Like I'm not in a huge rush, so we'll see. Who knows when you guys will see it again. Maybe once I've made significant progress, but yeah. And then, okay, so this next thing is not really, like I don't really have okay. The next thing is my granny strap blanket. And I'm not going to show you guys the granny strap blanket because I haven't actually made a lot of progress with it. But what I did want to show off is yesterday I made some more magic knot balls, which is what I use to make this so that I don't have to like join as I go. So I made 5 more magic knot balls, and I have no idea how much these weigh. Like, my guess is that they're maybe 75 grams a piece, and they're all roughly the same size. So I made 5 of these. Let's see if I can hold them all up at the same time. Okay, so these are 5 more magic knot balls to add into my granny strap blanket, and I'm just super duper excited about it. It really got me excited to start working on it again, which will have to wait until the weather's a bit cooler, because with just the size of it right now, it has to kind of sit on my lap, or otherwise it just falls all over the place. It's too warm right now to have this big wool blanket sitting on my lap. But I am really excited to get back into it once the weather cools down a little bit. So yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next. So the sort of most immediate thing, and this is the thing that I'm using the yarn from the Viajante for, is I want to make I think it's the Luella Cardi. And this is a pattern that I've had my eye on for a long time, but I just, you guys know I have a huge struggle with garment knitting. Like, I want to knit garments, but I just don't really feel like I would wear knit garments very much. And this sort of gets into sort of some other stuff that's going on in my life right now, but I'm currently in a bit of a wardrobe crisis, or coming out of a wardrobe crisis, where I just feel like my wardrobe had gotten very casual. And a lot of that is because of sort of my work, right? Because I work in an academic environment, and especially because I'm not usually lecturing or anything like that. Like, I have very little contact actually with like students or administrators. I can dress very casually, and I've gone through spurts where I've tried to dress more professionally, but it's just like, what's the point, right? If literally no one's going to see me, what's the point? But I've made a new friend recently, someone who recently started working at the university, and she always dresses comfortably, but not necessarily casually. Like, she dresses nice, but in a comfortable sort of way. And I really sort of look at her sense of style, and I'm like, yes, I like that. And it just has sort of made me start thinking about like my own sense of style, especially as I'm preparing to transition out of academic life. And I just, sort of feel like I never took my wardrobe fully out of sort of like the grad student phase into proper adult phase. And so I'm kind of working on that right now. I'm trying to dress a little bit nicer, and part of that is wearing dresses. I'm actually wearing a dress right now. Skirt. So part of that is wearing more dresses, because like, they're comfortable, especially with how hot it is, right? It's very comfortable because most of my dresses are sleeveless, and it means I can leave my legs bare. But like, they just look nice, and they give the illusion that you put a lot of effort into your outfit, even though it's like, this is one piece. Like, this is literally the easiest thing I could do today. And so because I've been wearing more dresses, I like sleeveless dresses, because then I don't have to worry as much about the fit in the shoulders, and it's a little bit cooler, but I want to wear sweaters when I'm inside. But the style of dress that I wear, I tend to like them to be a little bit more fitted in the waist, which means that I can wear sort of bigger cardigans with them, but it also opens up the door to what I think of as like cropped cardigans, or cardigans that would end sort of like here at my natural waist. Which now, if I'm only making a cardigan that's this long, well now, like, that makes a cardigan a heck of a lot less daunting than if I'm trying to make it like more tunic length. And so what really pushed me over the edge is there's a project for the Luella Cardi, and I'm not going to put a picture on screen because it's not the designer's picture, and I don't necessarily want to just grab some random person's picture without asking them, but I will link to it in the notes. But this person, they modified the pattern very heavily to make a sort of cropped cardigan, and they have pictures of them wearing it with a dress with a fairly full skirt, which is what I tend to prefer, is a more fitted top and a full skirt. And I was just like, yes, I need that in my life. And so that's what I'm going to be making next. And so I'm going to be using the rest of the yarn that I dyed up that is, for the Viajante. But like, her project only took 2 1/4 skeins, she said. And so I'm thinking that it's not going to take all 1,200 yards of this yarn. So I'm going to, make that cardigan, and then, like I said, take whatever's left over and then add it to the Viajante and finish off the Viajante. But I am just super duper excited about this. And I'm actually planning on starting it today, probably once I finish with the rest of my adulting that needs to get done today. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. Hopefully I'll have something to show the next time. It's going to be really interesting because, one, because I haven't knit that many sweaters, and I've never knit a circular yoke sweater before, so that will definitely be a new thing for me. So I'm pretty excited for that. So, okay, yeah. So then let's talk a little bit about that sort of fade idea that I had. So this is sort of a thing that has been playing around with my brain for a little while now. And it probably will become like a match and move or something. Like, it really sort of lends itself to a big, gigantic shawl, although I'm open to other options. But basically, I have these 3 yarns that I think would make a really good fade. And it's not showing up super well because they're getting really washed out. But this, I know I showed this off a little while ago. This is one of those, this is that sort of speckled yarn that I dyed up, which has the big pop of pink in it and then little green speckles with bits of purple. And then this is the yarn that I made my furrow sock out of, which I have since frogged. This is the furrow sock because it was just too small. And this is Knit Picks Fleechy, the Fleechy base. And so this has more of the green and slightly less of the pink. And then this is yarn that I dyed up quite a while ago, and this is a variegated just green. And so I think I could do a fade where, I start with this and I fade into this, because this sort of, blends that in more green and sort of, keeps the pink theme going, but sort of brings in more of the green, and then fade from this into this. So I think, this transition could be slightly jarring, but I think it could be fine. So yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking. And I was thinking that could be a really good sort of like match and move kind of shawl, like just a big, huge, giant thing. Or maybe I've seen a lot of like rectangular shawls lately too, sort of these big rectangular wraps. So maybe something like that. But yeah, that is sort of something that I have, bouncing around in my brain, but I don't have any firm plans. But I think that will be something I will probably start working on maybe in fall sometime. I feel like it'd be really good travel knitting, because I'm going to pick something which is just going to be big and brainless. So maybe it'll be good travel knitting for, some of the travel that I'm doing in the fall. So who knows? But that's sort of the thoughts on like what's coming up next. And like I said, the dyeing that I've done, I've already sort of shown off with everything else. So yeah, good things are happening, and I'm very excited. And I definitely felt like I had lost a little bit of my knitting mojo over the summer, just because I was so busy and just so stressed out. And now I can definitely sort of feel it coming back a little bit as I'm relaxing a little bit more. And so that's a really nice thing. And while it is still very hot, like it is still July, although it'll be July 31st when you guys see this, so it'll be practically August, but like August is like the worst part of summer. So it's still very hot and it's still very summery, but like I can also sort of start to sense that like, all right, fall's coming, right? Like fall's gonna be here soon. And especially with how crazy August is gonna be, I think it's going to be September before I know it. And it's like, okay, yes, like I'm excited to be, maybe knitting some sweaters, knitting some big shawls again. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so let's talk knit along. So we are, by the time you guys are seeing this, we are basically halfway through our current knit along, which is what is this one called? I think the Little Things KAL. It's been so long since I've had to say it, I forget what it is. But just as a reminder, sort of the theme is sort of speckles for the color, and then all over patterning for the technique. So I think we have about 20 finished objects right now in the finished objects thread, which is awesome. And it's been really fun because I feel like this is another sort of theme where it's actually surprising to me how different everything is that's being submitted for the FOs. Of course, like there are lots of, speckled socks, but like, in terms of the sort of like, just in terms of speckles, right? Like speckles can mean a lot of different things. Like I've actually seen some where they're like striped speckles, or like there was a finished object which was speckled scrappy socks, which was really cool. So like, within speckles, it's been really fun to see sort of the variations there. And it's also been really cool to see, just like when I say like all over patterning, like that brings in everything practically. So it's been fun to see sort of all these different sorts of patterns coming in under the all over patterning theme, and it's just been really fun for me. So I am going to try and be a little bit more active in those threads coming up again, now that I sort of have my head above water and I can breathe a little bit better. But yeah, keep it up. We still have a month left. I don't have prize yarn yet, but I will definitely try and have that by the next time I record. Because yeah, it is now time to start thinking about the next knit along. So yeah, awesome. Keep it up. And I'm super excited to see finished objects continue coming in. So that's that. And then let's talk a little bit about a question of the week. So the question of the week this week that I sort of want to talk about is, what is the most you have ever modified a pattern, right? So this is some pattern which was published that you didn't write, obviously, right? So someone else's pattern. What is the most you have ever modified that and had a successful finished object come out of it? And if you're responding to this on Ravelry, feel free to link to project photos because I would love to see that. But I feel like I do this all the time, and sometimes it works out well and sometimes it doesn't work out so well. With that Luella cardigan, right, I'm planning on modifying it quite a bit. And of course, I do actually have someone's project where I at least have pictures to go off of, and she made some brief notes about what she did, so that is nice to have. But it is, of course, always a risk. And I did this before when I made my second poly cardigan, where I modified it very heavily, and I actually would say that that was a successful finished object. It was a wearable garment. I just don't wear it that much because it doesn't fit me that well. But I mean, otherwise, the modifications were successful and they did work the way that I wanted them to. So yeah. So what is the most you have ever modified something? And if you are not someone who modifies patterns, why? Is it just because you only pick out patterns that are exactly what you want, or is it because you just feel like you maybe don't have the knowledge on how to do that? I just would be curious, because I feel like there are those of us who have no fear, with modifying patterns, and we're just sure, let's try whatever, right? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then there are people who either have a lot of fear about it or just a lot of reluctance to. And one is not necessarily better than the other. I'm just curious, what divides people into each of those camps. So let me know, what's the most you've ever modified a pattern and had a successful finished object come out of? And if you don't, what's holding you back? So yeah, that's my question of the week this week. And that's going to be it for the knitting stuff. So if that's all you were here for, thanks very much for hanging out. And I will see you hopefully in another 2 weeks. I have to think about what does my calendar look like. But my guess is that I should be recording again in another 2 weeks. So hopefully I'll see you then. If that's all you were interested in, thanks very much for watching. Otherwise, let's do a little bit of chit chat. I'm not even going to pause. I'm just going to keep going because I don't want to let the chit chat get too long, and I don't have anything to sit and knit on right now. So that obviously keeps me from rambling on for too long. But yeah, let's talk about what else has been going on. So, like I said, teaching is winding down. Also, just in general, a lot of stuff at work right now is just winding down. So my teaching is. Also, with the summer labs that we have running, 2 of those ended this past week, so we only have 1 going right now. So that makes my job a lot easier in terms of the lab setups and stuff. So I do still actually have a lot to get done before classes start in August. But luckily, and I think I've mentioned this before, but typically the labs don't start until after Labor Day in the fall because of just weirdness about that. So I actually have basically all of August to wrap up some things. So I do have a lot of that stuff to do. I even still have a lot of teaching stuff to do because I still need to, write up solutions for their homework that is due tomorrow. I need to write up solutions for the quiz I'm going to give tomorrow. I need to write up solutions for the final, which actually needs to get done today because I need to, for the final that I'm giving them, so they have class tomorrow, which is sort of a review day, and then the final they're actually taking on Wednesday. But I'm giving them half of the final as a take-home, so they will get that tomorrow on Monday, and then they will have to bring it to hand in on Wednesday when they take the rest of the final. But I need to actually work through those take-home problems and make sure that they are not too hard, which I haven't done yet. So that needs to get done sometime today. But yeah, I'm excited to be done with that. I gave my last, real lecture, introducing new material on Friday, and possibly my last lecture forever because, I may be leaving teaching forever at the end of this year. And so, that was a little bit strange, but yeah, so it is what it is. And so, yeah, but like that's all been sort of winding down, which has, I'm just so much calmer now than I was before, and I just feel so much better. That it's unbelievable. And like, don't get me wrong, I am really glad that I had the chance to teach this summer, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I got the experience to do it. But it was stressful. And obviously, like, that's because I was preparing everything for the first time, right? Like, if I were to teach this again now, like say in fall semester, like if I were to just teach the same class again, obviously that would be a lot easier because now I already have everything prepared. So, yeah, but otherwise I think I would have been so bored that I would have been stressed for the opposite reason, because when I don't have enough to do, then I get really stressed out and bored. So it just was a thing, and I'm glad that it's done now. But otherwise, like I said, August is going to be crazy because I do still have a lot of like loose ends to tie up at work with stuff before fall semester begins. And I'm going to be going back to Minnesota for, I think, how long? 9 days? 10 days? Something like that. Basically, between the ending of my sort of summer commitments and the start of fall semester, I'm taking as much time as I can to go back home to Minnesota to see my family. And Wesley's going to be joining me there for part of the trip so that we can see his family and we can see each other finally again, because we haven't seen each other since June 10th, and we won't see each other again until mid-August. So that's been fun. Yeah, not fun at all. But anyway, so, and my mom is getting married in August, right? So that's part of the timing of the trip is being there for her wedding. And so, so it's just, that is going to be a lot to do, a lot of sort of visiting family and seeing family for maybe the last time until, the holidays, if even then. So that's going to be good. And then fall semester will start, and I am actually taking 2 courses in the fall, in addition to sort of my work and my teaching load. I'm taking the last 2 courses that I need in statistics to sort of graduate in December with my certificate that I've been working on. So yeah, it's been an interesting weekend because, I'm feeling very calm because things are sort of back under control in terms of like my teaching and everything else. But it's like, it's going to be a short-lived calm because now I have a lot of other stuff to get done. But at the same time, like, a lot of the other stuff I have to get done is stuff which is more familiar, like editing the manuals to update them for fall and get them ready to send off to the printers and stuff like that. So it's like, that's very familiar stuff. I'm used to doing that. And then some of it is just sort of like, putting, like I've said, we got a whole bunch of this new equipment, and I still have not quite found a place for all of it to go, because one of the lab rooms has not been used at all this summer. So I've kind of been using that as my like staging room and just like a dumping ground for everything. So like, I need to clean that room out and actually figure out where to put all the new stuff and figure out how I'm supposed to dispose of all of the old stuff, which is basically just junk. But luckily, like, that is something which has a very clear solution to it, right? It's like, okay, well, you just need to put all this stuff in a box and find a place on the shelf for it, right? So like, I sort of enjoy those tasks sometimes because they're relatively brainless and they have a very clear endpoint and a very clear solution to them. So that's always nice. But yeah, I think that might be it for me today. I've rambled on, I think, for long enough. I actually don't think this episode hopefully got too long, so that's good. But yeah, like I said, I do still have some other adulty things that need to get done today, so I think I will end here. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks for sort of hanging out through this entire summer, which has been so uneven, I guess, sort of in terms of like podcasting frequency and everything, and I feel like I have maybe been a little bit of a whiny pants throughout the summer because I've just been a little bit stressed out and a little bit too busy. But yeah, hopefully things are going to settle down a lot more soon, and if the heat could just break and if it could just be a little bit nicer weather and fall could come early, that would be super. I would really enjoy that. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me today. Thanks very much for hanging out, and I will see you guys in about 2 weeks, is my guess. Bye.